Hello, everybody. Jumping on an impromptu live as I'm doing these days. Gonna give folks a couple minutes to join. Seconds, moments. How are we doing today? Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Happy holiday long weekend. I am wanting to talk to you about why the foundation and the basics matter. And this has been showing up in many parts of my life, all sorts of life, all sorts of examples within yoga, within my practice, within my own healing, all these sorts of things. And it's really easy for us to poo-poo the basics, or it's like, I already know that, or I've heard it a million times, or we tune out when we hear simple messages. So I want to talk about that today. Hello, hello. Where are you all joining me from today? Do you have a long weekend? Do you have tomorrow off? And feel free, especially as I'm chatting, to drop questions. I love to respond. It's part of my makeup. It's like where my most potent stuff comes from is responding to people's questions. So feel free to drop. All right, y'all. Let's dive into this. So it might seem obvious on the surface that, well, obviously the basics matter, but also I want to learn the advanced stuff. Everyone wants to jump to advanced. And I get there's something within our egos around that of wanting to be better, further along, just so that we can feel good enough, that the basics aren't enough. And I want to offer, I always use a house metaphor. When you're building a house, you need a proper foundation, especially if it is a large house or a skyscraper, right? A large house, a large building needs proper foundation, which means like the basics, the cement, whatever that all involves. I don't know exactly. I'm not a contractor, but it requires a solid foundation for you to build upon. You can't jump from, let's say, yoga, like taking your first yoga class, then to jumping into a really advanced pose. You could hurt yourself, right? Because your body doesn't really know where it's going. Certain muscles aren't fired, etc. We'll get into that. But it's the same idea. We need to build in layers. And so this is the same for all sorts of things, whether it be our healing, our transformation, our business, whatever you are doing. So full transparency, I did not appreciate this back in my grad school days is like the first example I can think of. In grad school, I tended to be quiet. Like I wasn't the one to ask questions. And this was my own insecurity. And I remember specifically, there were like a couple people that I can recall that were really, hello, hey Arwa. There were some people who are really willing to ask questions. And I'll tell you, this is back in 2009. So this has been a long time ago. I was internally judgmental. I was just like, why are they asking that? That's such an obvious question. That was in my head. Yet I was the, unwilling one. I was the unwilling one because I didn't get it. Because I was like, that's so obvious. We just talked about this. Like we read about this. Like I didn't understand what was the value in asking a question. But now you know, if folks who have followed me, that I love questions because of the frequency that it creates for you. The possibility to attract more things to you. The clarity that drops in. So like now I love a question. But back in the day, I didn't appreciate it at all. And the judgment came from my own insecurity about needing to know enough, be good enough, look like I didn't need to ask. See, I didn't need to ask a question. I know it. However, there's a very big difference between cognitive knowing and embodied knowing. Big difference. Cognitive knowing is you get it, you understand it in your head, but embodied knowing is you've had real-time experiences. Oh, that's what that is. Like real life experiences. So what happens with information, if you will, when you first hear something that is too far off from your construct of the world, you might not even hear it. That's what our brains do. We're literally like, it'll distort it, delete, like we won't hear it. Then once we're closer in frequency, we can hear it, and maybe even it starts to make sense. Oh, I can see why that makes sense. But it is not until we have real-time experiences in our life that give us the data. Abraham Hicks says this all the time. They say, words don't teach, experiences do. And I recently heard that. They've said it a million times, but I didn't hear it before until recently because this has been up in my world. Words don't teach, experiences do. And I was like, yep. Hello. It's the embodied experiences. So that means the basics can actually become quite advanced. Now, before I get into that, I want to offer that any master practices the basics daily. Any master. Think of any profession and they practice basics daily. In ballet, 6 days a week. 6 days a week, sometimes 7, we had ballet class. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for being here. We had ballet class before rehearsal. Not only to warm up your body, but to practice pliés, tendus, relevés, pirouettes, jumps, the basics, over and over and over. How many tendus did I do in my life? I don't know, I couldn't count. 17 years times 6-7 days a week times multiple classes a day times multiple sides. That's a lot of freaking tendus, okay? So what if I had been like a few classes in, I'm good. I know what a tendu is. I can, you've told me, I could tell you what it is. I could even show you. Because there is deeper and deeper and deeper levels of understanding. If you look at, and we use ballet because it's really familiar to me. If you look at kids doing ballet and them doing a tendu, and you look at professionals doing a tendu, like professional adults, it looks very different. Although it is the same movement, it looks like night and day. Because all of a sudden there is this immense refinement to it, where the basics of a tendu are broken down to just even rolling through the bones of the foot. There's so much more articulation and finesse, and there's just so much more elegance to it that comes with time, that comes with practice. And so the basics are similar. So I'm seeing this in all sorts of places, where the basics matter. Where in your life have you maybe been ignoring the simplicity of going outside and sitting on the patio and not scrolling your phone and listening to the birds? The simplicity of putting your feet in the earth. The simplicity of tuning into your breath. The simplicity of bringing your mindset, your attention to the present moment. We are constantly distracted by all these things going on. More information. I need more. I need to learn. What's more advanced? What's the new shiny tool? Are you practicing the basics? Do you need a new shiny tool, or do you require to practice the basics? The simplicity, the creating space. Because part of my makeup is I just really love to learn, and I want to learn more. What does this do? What does that do? What does this do? And try all sorts of things. And so I'm like constantly learning. And then I can get hit with something like recently having a pain flare. And for me, the basics that were required were emotional expression and truly expressing me. So it was interesting because I was watching like a reality TV show. It was like the Kardashians. And it struck me how Courtney just said, no, this is not how I want to do this. I want to do it like this to the family. And I was like, I'd seen the dynamic 1,000 times, but all of a sudden it struck me, wow, I have not been willing to be that potent or really voice just right where I'm at. And it was easy for me to go into like, oh my God, like I know this, I've learned all this stuff, like I get it, right? I've done so much learning on this, I get it. But in that moment, I had like a real-time learning moment, if you will. Now you could say that's really basic. Like she said no. She set a boundary. It was black coffee boundary, but she set a boundary. And if you followed me for a long time, you know that that's actually been my content for forever, was like boundary, like role-playing boundaries. Yet in that moment, the basics of a boundary, I had a huge awareness. I have not been willing to be that because I'm so aware, and maybe this will resonate with you, you're so sensitive that you're aware of how everyone is feeling and what they desire and blah, blah, blah. And so you could say it's people pleasing, but it's like, you're just aware. And so you'd like to kind of keep it, all flowing. And it's like, you could be the flexible one. You're fine. You could be the flexible one. You can take it easy. I could do that. I could not do that. I don't really care. Like that. But is that truly what you desire? So in that moment, seeing that and her saying, no, that's not what I want to do. I was like, oh, I've never said it like that before. Because I was feeling unwilling to disrupt, have other people be uncomfortable. The basics. The basics. And so this idea of, how do we build upon this? Asking questions. We tend to avoid asking questions because what will people think? Like, people are going to judge me. They're going to think I should know this. And it could be very easy for me to go into, I'm thinking like my personal container that I'm in, and be like, oh my God, I'm the psychologist. Why am I asking a question about emotional IQ or boundaries or whatever? No, I am workshopping the crap out of that. Just because I've learned it cognitively and I facilitate others doesn't mean like I'm good, I got it all. No, the basics. Masters practice the basics. If I could only stop myself from expecting a timeline of when concepts should be embodied. Yes. And so my coach said it to me like this, which was really helpful, is things that are coming up for you. It's like trying to read a book this far in front of you. You can't really read it. And I describe it like blind spots. We all have blind spots. No matter how much work you've done, how much you've learned, we have blind spots. And we require being in these spaces where people can mirror and facilitate us to more clarity. Yes, there's something I say that folks have the knowing, like you know, and having people that have like the keys or the codes or they've embodied something different than you, that can help bring you there. So I'm always seeking to be in spaces where the facilitator has embodied something that I have not. It's not that I don't know it. Like, right? I know these things. I've learned a lot of them. I know them. But does my body know them? And so, especially with this like pain incidents, it invited me to clarity of where I was unwilling to be a certain energy. Unwilling to express me. Truly. And so social media has been this whole like learning experience for that, for sure. For sure, for sure. Because it's a constant invitation to invite you to be more of you, to notice where you're still hiding. So this idea of question, I encourage my clients to ask the questions. Anytime they're stuck on something, even if they think it's dumb, even if they think it's basic, even if they think they should know it, even if they think they do know it, ask it. Ask the question. Because it's about getting more clarity, embodied awareness. That's the only way we can shift things, is through increased awareness. So I can consume all the information I want. I've done plenty of that. But asking the question and getting facilitation, information that's different than maybe you've heard before is life-changing. Hi, I have a question. Great. How do you apply the theory that you know? I mean, I know what I'm supposed to, but how do I do it? Great question. So, because a lot of this stuff can be really abstract, right? When we're talking about mindset and all of that. And you're like, okay, I think I get it, but I don't get it. How am I supposed to do it? So, one way that we tend to block our knowing is to say, I don't know. We've been taught that a lot. Like, find the answer, search outside of yourself, doubt yourself. You've been taught that. So it's like, I don't know. Or we back off the energy if we don't want to be seen or heard. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. So whenever I'm facilitating someone, it's okay, acknowledging that your ego is wanting to go into some protection mode right here. So what if you did know? You invite yourself the possibility of knowing. So pragmatically, anytime that you catch yourself going into, I don't know, just even with yourself, invite yourself to know. What if I did know? What would it be? Even if nothing drops in, the practice of inviting yourself to the possibility of knowing starts to shift your attention immediately. Because think of that affirmation, I don't know. Okay, well, case closed. You're right. So if you invite yourself to the possibility of what if I did know? Maybe it won't drop in right away. But you start to shift your attention and possibility so that you attract knowing. And the more you rehearse this, again, the basics, the more you rehearse that you do know, you invite yourself to knowing, then it starts to come in. I think that there's something more about that. Knowing. So it's training yourself that you know. So something else that there's a reason why it's so easy for us to go into I don't know, or tell me what to do, because that's how this whole reality is built on it. I mean, not everything, most things that people are selling, let me show you how I did it. You don't know, let me show you how I did it. Now, well, I can appreciate that, especially for certain skill sets. When it comes to things that are a little more abstract, even business coaches, let's say, when they're this is how I did it, this is how you need to be. It's what do you mean by that? You could implement the exact strategy, trust me, I did it, the exact strategies that they're saying to do and it not do the same thing that it did for them. Why? Because you are a different frequency. And so it's not about learning like step by step what other people are doing. It's coming back to your internal knowing, your step by step. So trusting you. And then you can utilize other folks that have created things that you are desiring to create to look at what do they embody. Less about this is what they did step by step. Because I could say, well, like, look at all these like famous ballet, we're gonna go back to ballet dancers. They all took class daily since they were kids. That's how they did it. But just because every kid that does that takes class daily doesn't mean they'll all become professional ballet dancers. So this is why it comes to you trusting you and your knowing and what are you aware of. And this is where we have like a deep discrepancy, a deep deficit in folks trusting themselves. And so this is what I work on with folks. Trusting you, returning you back to you, right? Every time you go into I don't know, what if I did know? Because trusting you is going to create the reality you're desiring. Now think of it like this. If you trusted you, you would be willing to ask the questions. Yeah, I don't care if I look dumb or what they think. This is for me. I want clarity. That's you trusting you. So when people say you need to be it first to then have the reality, the be do have, right? Not the all be happy when. No, I need to be my future self now. When people say that, they mean you need to choose the things that that person would choose. And if you, the you right now is like, I don't want to ask questions, I don't want to look dumb, what are people going to say, blah, blah, then it's like, well, what would it take to be willing to look whatever? Be willing to be judged. Be willing to put out terrible content. That's another how-to that I use for myself when I get like stuck in a content creation funk is what would it take to be willing to put out terrible content right now? Because if I'm going into all this pressure of it needs to be really impactful, it needs to get 1 million likes and all this engagement, blah, 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 kills creation. Judgment kills creation. So I have to get out of that. I have to be willing to be what I resist, which is be like resisting doing it poorly. What would it take to be willing to be bad? What would it take to be willing to be dumb? Right? And it's like, yes, I'm saying get out of judgment in general, but sometimes we need to kind of like need to swing the other side to shake it loose. What's coming up for questions for folks right now? Would you be willing to put a question that you think is stupid, silly, that you think you already know? Because this is a really great time to try it out, what I'm saying. Like ask a question that you think you already know and see if you can lower your barriers and receive a new awareness about it. This is the idea of being coachable, remaining the forever student, because masters practice the basics daily. So while people are maybe dropping a question or whatnot, I've been noticing this in yoga as well. Now that I've recently re-engaged in yoga since August, I've been practicing a lot, like 5-6 days a week sometimes. And I've noticed how it can be really easy in some classes to jump into really advanced poses. And if your body is not warmed up properly, if your body is not, the right muscles aren't fired, like for instance, in yoga, it does require a lot of abdominals to hold poses. But sometimes abdominal work is not part of a yoga flow. Yet when I do abdominal work, I find that I have more success. I've set myself up for success to do harder balance poses because I've practiced the basics in the beginning of class to set myself up for later. But if I try to jump right into a balance pose, it's like my muscles are, holy cow, what's going on? I'm not ready for this. Set yourself up for success. So it's like the simplicity, if we can get out of our egos of needing to prove something, the simplicity, the basics are so, so important. Whew, how do I lower barriers to resistance? Wow, that's a huge question. Wow, that's a big question. Now it seems simple, right? On the surface, like let go. Just let go. Just let it go, right? The whole song, let it go. But since we all either are struggling to manifest something, or if we have physical pain or physical illness or whatever, then we are in some sort of resistance. And so the idea here is that optimal mental and physical health comes from when we let go of resistance, which means we go with the flow. We're in allowance. We're in or surrender, as people say. Now, there's a subtle energy shift in lying down like a doormat and taking it versus allowing yourself to flow and engaging with life. So on the surface, when I think of resistance, we're going into shoulds, expectations, projections, rejections of how we think life should be, judgments. Shoulds create an expectation of a reality that doesn't exist. So if you're going into this should happen, this shouldn't happen, resistance. So what would it take to come from question instead and function from, well, what else is possible here? You can acknowledge, hey, like, I was hoping this was going to happen. I was focused on this and this was my target and that didn't happen. Okay, cool. What else could I choose here? So something that I have shared with my clients before is, so we have a condo in Chicago, and during COVID, we were renting out for a bit, but during COVID, we were looking at like, well, maybe we're just going to sell it. We're going to sell it so we can buy a house, blah, blah. And it was lots of resistance, lots of force. A couple of people came through, 0 offers, months and months and months. It's on the market. And I was resistant to renting it out at the time. My realtor says, hey, what do you think about renting it out? Like, we've tried this for a while. What else is possible? Or take it off the market. All right, let's see if renting is a possibility again. One day it's on the market to rent and we have like 3 offers. Okay, universe. Is it possible the universe is more aware of what could infinitely get me from point A to point B faster than I have decided? This is why when we are in conclusion, we block ourselves from receiving. We are in resistance when we are in conclusion because we have already predetermined what should happen. This is why question is so potent. So it's like a moment, by day by topic, because you might be having less resistance to some areas in your life than others. And so the funny thing is we resist in order to shift something, but the adage of what resists persists, whatever we resist persists. We actually have to be in allowance, accepting, if you will, in allowance of right where we're at and exactly what's happening, grateful for what's happening in order to shift it. So when you can pragmatically shift your attention to that, so that's just, again, moment by moment, day by day, journaling, vision boarding, however you like to do it, shifting your point of focus towards allowance. That's a big question. Thank you. This is another very popular one. Thank you for asking. Why I know the tools but can't practice them. Very common. I hear this all the time. I would reframe it for yourself. Really, this is a really subtle tweak. I'd reframe it for yourself of, I know the tools and I'm not choosing to practice them. That simple choice versus can't gives you back the power. We want to give you the power without judging yourself. So don't go into judgment of like, oh my God, I'm not choosing. No, because again, that's going to create resistance. The judgment is going to create resistance. We don't want that. We're creating awareness of, okay, it's just interesting. It's just interesting that I'm not choosing this. For what purpose am I not choosing this? What have I decided about this? Have I decided the tools won't actually work? Do I doubt the tools? Do I doubt that it can be that simple? Do I doubt that it can be that easy? That's a big one. If we're functioning from the point of view that it's hard or it has to be really complicated, then like waking up and doing breath work right when I wake up every morning, or going outside and taking in some sun and getting my feet on the earth, if I have concluded that that is not valuable enough, so there can be like lots of layers to this, because it could be even something like, well, I have depression, so I don't feel like, that's why I don't do the tools, or I just don't feel like doing it today. That's just interesting. We can choose to follow how we feel, or we can choose something else to shift our state. So something that's, I would say, has come easily for me throughout the years is to be self-guided in movement, I would say, exercise in general. Especially when I'm into it, like I'm like, there's no force, like, oh, I need to get up to go to yoga. It's like, no, I want to. But in the beginning, it doesn't start like that. It starts with, I desire to feel different than how I'm feeling now. So let me choose something to shift it. Not, I need to feel better now. No, well, I desire to feel different. So let me choose things that create that. So I give myself the power back to shift it. That's a huge shift. Let me know how that lands, because there could be more to that. Hello. I'm so grateful. Hello, thanks for joining me live. What other questions do you all have? What do I want to say about the basics? Awesome. You're welcome. It's the simplicity. And so anytime that I am struggling, I zoom back in on the basics. What am I doing right when I wake up in the morning? Is my head going into blah, 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 or am I intentionally directing my attention? Am I commanding the energy? Am I commanding my attention? Because we often are functioning for more disempowerment. I can't do it because I can't do it because, or like, it's my attention, it's my this, it's my that. It's like, it's all interesting. It's interesting. I could say I can't do certain poses because of my scoliosis in yoga. And on one hand, I'm aware of physical, maybe vulnerabilities within my spine. On the other hand, I come from the point of view of, what would it take? What would it take for me to do anything? Anything. And so I'm coming from the point of view that it is possible. That's a pretty big shift from, it's not possible because of X. How do I get out of bed? Choice. Don't make it so complicated. You command your energy and choose. The quickest shift for depression is energy activation, shifting state. Think of your body, it's like an energy receiver. It's constantly perceiving energy, and you are like an instrument. You need to tune it. And if you are constantly, you've been at the frequency of a depressed, apathetic state for a long time, that just feels really familiar. And so you can't outthink. I just need to think about like how to get out of bed and blah, blah, blah. And then you judge yourself more for not getting out of bed. And that, Don't think, choose. We way overuse our minds. Way. We spend so much time. We fill up the space with thought. The more we can be practicing non-thought, meditation, breath work, something like yoga, a hobby, yada yada, the better off we are. I desire to do something different, feel different. So what can I choose today that creates it? Amazing question. Just you, by putting that question out there, shifts your attention to the possibility of it. Because if you were like, I feel this way, and I guess, well, here goes the day, then you're right. Versus you're putting your actual attention on, no, what else is possible? What could shift it? And oftentimes, it requires us choosing something. Like for me, especially going to yoga or Pilates in the morning, being physically active, moving my body shifts state really quickly. And so it's like doing those physical things, choosing them over and over and over. I feel very different now, today, than I did when I woke up. Because I'm still like coming out of this pain thing, and it created a lot of emotional stuff for me. But I continued to choose because I know staying stuck in that will not help me. Command the energy. Command it. Versus bracing yourself for impact. Command it. You are in charge. Great question. How do I stop mindless scrolling on my phone, please? So first, acknowledge that the apps are highly addictive and they are meant to like grab your attention, blah, blah, right? Acknowledge that. Then how can I set myself up for success? There are apps like, oh my gosh, I can't even think of it right now. What is the app called? Wow, it escaped my mind. But there are apps that can like lock social media apps, lock certain apps. If anyone thinks of it or knows the name, could you drop it in the comments? But so you can set it for certain parameters. Screen Zen, that's the one I used. Screen Zen. So you can like lock certain apps so that they only open for so many times a day, how much times a day, or sometimes just randomly if you want to set it that way, or be hardcore. Like you can set the parameters, the boundaries, however you want. You Frappuccino boundaries with yourself or coffee boundaries with yourself. So that can be pragmatically something to choose to support that, right? Because it's so habitual. When I did that, I noticed how many times I just went to grab my phone and like open the app. So that helped bring more awareness and mindfulness to it. And then I would also look at what else would I be choosing if I wasn't mindlessly scrolling. Like if social media was gone tomorrow, like it was literally not an option, or maybe even like shopping. Like let's say just the internet's like down. You cannot go on your phone. What would you be doing? What would you be doing? What are some things that are just fun or that you've minimized? Like, is it coloring? Is it going for a walk? Is it breathing outside? What is it? because the mindless scrolling is a way for us to numb out. Numb out. And it's just, and this is where we've gotten to this point where we numb out with lots of things. And it's okay. So your awareness to it with supporting things like maybe using an app to contribute and seeing how you can put in more things to your life that squeezes out less time for you to scroll. What things could you add to your life? You could make a list of things that you enjoy doing, that you haven't been doing. Maybe it's like reading certain books. And then setting time aside, maybe put it on your calendar even, like, this is going to be my reading time. And then you choose it. Any other questions? It's fun today. I'm in blue also. What is that about? I'm a neutral girl. My pants are white though. The basics. The basics. Even something like that last question, like how do I stop mindlessly scrolling? The basics. My pleasure. The basics. Because what if it was as simple as cutting down your scrolling time wildly shifted your mental state? Would you be willing to choose it? Oh, thank you. I'm grateful you're here. Would you be willing to choose it? I'll definitely save this and likely put it on YouTube as well because I find that's easier for replay access. I am not single. I am married. Thank you. Any other questions around the basics, the simplicity? What basics are you not choosing? Oh, awesome. What basics are you not choosing? What have you decided is so simple that you're ignoring it? That could change. And that's the power of question, is it starts to put your attention on looking for possibilities so that your awareness, your intuition is more likely to respond with something. Choose this. Choose that. Choose this. When you're seeking clarity, ask a question. Is there anything more I want to say about the basics? I do it for myself all the time. Like right now when I'm looking for what else is possible, like the energy's winding down, I'm like, okay, what else? What else? Is there more? Is there something else that wants to come through? I don't get that there is at this moment. But if you have a question, please drop it. But this is something that, I encourage my clients all the time. Basics, ask a question. The basics, ask a question. The basics, ask a question. And so literally this is what my office hours is, which is every other week. Completely unstructured. We don't have a direction on it's like, this is the topic. What energy is up? What energy is up right now? What do we need to look at? What's coming up for you? And hot seat facilitation. And that takes courage. That takes 1,000 more times courage than going and sitting and consuming information. Now, information's great. Masterclasses are great. I love those things too. And it takes wild amounts of courage to sit in a hot seat and ask the question that you're kind of like, about in front of others. Why? Because you are in mass amounts of judgment about it. You're judging it. It's like, why haven't I figured this out? I can't share this. And this is why oftentimes too, people they maybe want to do one-on-one more. There is a time and place for one-on-one, yes. But they might avoid group things because they don't want to expose it in front of others. They don't want to expose it in front of others. And it's interesting because when you shine the light on the shadow, it expands. The light expands. It lightens up. But if you keep the shadow in the dark, then it stays there and it's like becomes Voldemort. Say the name. Say the name. Voldemort. Say it. Acknowledge it. When you acknowledge it, it lightens up. If there's something you've been struggling with and you've been like keeping it secret, what's the phrase? Secrets keep you sick. Kind of the same idea. So this is why this is what I'm teaching you. This is gain the skills through the questions. Gain the skills by doing the thing. This is why my offers are now more application focused. So like in Nervous System Sanctuary, my weekly call, people show up, I guide you through regulating your nervous system. Yes, there's like a little like, learn this about the nervous system, but it's mostly application. The same with office hours. It's all about choosing the thing, exposing you, putting yourself in the hot seat, asking the questions. Or if you can't make the calls, we have like a chat that you can drop your questions. But the idea here is be willing to shine light on what you're stuck on what you're afraid of, on what you're struggling with, because then it's not so scary. You realize it's really not a big deal. Especially when you're in a space where I am asking you and saying, please, please, ask the dumb questions. Ask the basics. Ask the most basic question you think you could ask. Please ask it. Because as I was saying earlier, in my own container, I was looking at, holy crap, I just embodied another understanding level of emotional IQ and boundaries and expressing myself that I wasn't aware of. And that only helps me to continue to take other people further. This is why I'm constantly in a self-development, self-growth. Like I'm constantly learning, constantly learning. Whether I'm in other people's containers or like the yoga teacher trainer or whatever, because the more I expand myself, the more I put myself into the things that I'm asking folks to do, right? The further I can take people. I won't ask you to choose something that I have not chosen. And I went through many years of not being willing to ask the questions. And especially in a group. To be like, hi, I'm supposed to be the expert here. And now I'm going to ask a question and expose where I'm struggling. So that's what office hours is. And basically we're focusing on the energy of what is up. So it's not like it's this topic, because there's going to be lots and lots of different energies that are up. And likely if it's up for you, it is up for other people in the group. And so that can be so helpful too, to hear it from someone else. There's so much healing in that. And then Spacious. So anyways, office hours, next call is June 1st. So this Thursday, they're every other Thursday. There's actually 3 in June. Has to get better than that, because usually there's 2 every month. So there's 3. This is a great time to join. It's like a join. There's no, you can join 1 month, leave. You could join for 6 months, whatever. Stay, come back, whatever. It's like right now it's an open door. We'll see if it stays like that, but for now it's an open door. So if you're wanting facilitation from me, that's a great thing to join. If you're wanting to go deeper, Spacious, my mastermind is my voice note and text container, mastermind. So office hours is calls, and Spacious is like me in your back pocket via WhatsApp channel. So a new round is starting June 14th. So applications are in my bio, and I am obsessed. I love a voice note text container, because just when the energy's up, you can drop it. You can drop the question. Energy's up, drop it. You don't have to wait till the next call. Yes, I'm not in there 24/7. I am there business hours, if you will, but drop it so that we can address it and move the energy much faster. And I'm obsessed with that. And that one is all about focusing on your intuition, gaining clarity on that. There's a whole space masterclass that I'll probably talk more about in another live. But if that's paying you, because that's like 2 weeks, apply. Because like that container is like chef's kiss, and it's a small group, 10, 11 max. So, all right, you all. Thank you so much for joining. How do I live more like Bucky? That was a great question. He is chilling hard. His nervous system is super chill. He's the one that gets me to throw the ball when I just want to work more and get more present. So if you need an example of very present beings, look at your pets. They can teach us so much. All right, y'all. I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me.